Eagles Nation, what is up? We are so close to the regular season. I mean, it's just crazy how time goes like that. How time goes from, you're talking about the draft. It feels like just a couple, it feels like a week ago we were talking about Sidney Jones and Derek Barnett being the newly drafted guys and Alshon Jeffrey being signed. And now we're 1 week away, a little over 1 week away from getting to see these guys in Washington. Preseason game, Thursday. Game 4. Just going to decide the last couple roster spots, maybe not even. I could see, the roster being generally decided at this point. But there's a lot of questions still about this team. And, Bird Buzz, we get to answer those questions that the fans have. So I'm just going to dive right into the questions. I'm obviously very excited. Season's close. So we're going to get to see, this team live in action yet again for another year. So, I'll just get into the questions here. So, got my phone here. Going on Instagram, we got J_Brad13, which is Justin Bradley, one of our top viewers, one of the original viewers of this show. He asked, can you believe that the first game is almost a week away? And exactly what I just said. Perfect. First question. I didn't look at these questions, so I'm just going off, off the cuff here. But, the first question, how could it be more perfect to transition into? The first game is almost a week away. I can't even believe it. Carson Wentz's second year. It's going to be really fun to watch, and it's going to be really interesting for this team and seeing where they're at. Are they making that step forward, or is Doug Peterson and this regime going to be something we regret or think about first, take a second thought, and, they have a lot to prove, so let's see it. Okay, so Joseph FG_. Who's our starting running back for week 1? I don't really think it matters who starts. Thanks for the question, Joe, but I don't think it matters who really starts. I think that guys are going to get carries as they're playing well. So if Blunt's playing well, he'll be in there making plays, getting carries, going inside, punishing runner. If Wendell Smallwood is able to make plays, he'll be in there. If Darren Sproles is making plays, he'll be in there. So I think that those are your 3 running backs that'll most likely get the most run and things like that. But, that's what happens when you kind of neglect the running back position in the offseason. We don't really have – the Eagles don't really have a true number 1 back that you can say that guy's got to be on the field. So that's something that the Eagles have to look for in the coming years, and hopefully they can get it and they move forward and just make sure they hit their draft picks. And if they draft a running back, hopefully he's a good one. So – it's tough for this year, but those are the 3 guys I think that'll be in the mix there. The Folk 2 times asks, what's your opinion on the Joe Hayden news? Should the Eagles sign him? Will he be an immediate upgrade to Jalen Mills, and will he be the same player that he was for the Browns before his injuries? Obviously on Twitter today you can see that Joe Hayden was cut by the Browns, and I shared some thoughts on there, but to share them on here, I think that he's a really good player, and obviously by the time I'm making this video, right now as I'm recording, the Steelers have already signed Joe Hayden to a 3-year contract. So I think he's a good player, but I think that the Eagles would have pressed harder had they not drafted 2 corners in the first 3 rounds. Spending a second and a second and a second and a third for the organization to groom. You don't do that with the mindset of, let's bring another guy in. And then they traded a 3rd rounder for next year, already knowing they don't have a 2nd rounder, plus traded Jordan Matthews to get Ronald Darby, a 23-year-old cornerback. So you have 3 guys there that are all young that you spent pretty valuable assets on, pretty valuable resources you invested into those players, bringing them to Philadelphia. And then you also have Jalen Mills, who's a high-risk, or more so low-risk, high-reward, where he's a 7th-round pick, and he's looking to be at least somewhat of a serviceable rotational corner, make some plays, flashes at times, lacks that long speed. However, he's played very aggressively, and he's got a certain attitude, and I think that's what they're trying to breed in this defense, and having a bunch of players that can make plays and fill in when injuries are, they occur. That's good, and I think that getting those guys reps is what they dedicated themselves to when they invested all those high resources into those guys. And it's unfortunate that Sidney Jones is injured, but we wouldn't have gotten him in the 2nd round had he not tore his Achilles at his pro day. So whether he plays this year or not, we have to at least let these guys develop before going out and making changes right away. And I think that while Joe Hayden would be an upgrade to Jalen Mills, the long game is just more important. I mean, I don't think you're going to go out and sign 3 years, $27 million contract is what Joe Hayden got. So I don't think you're going to go. You would have had to outbid a very desperate team for a cornerback in Pittsburgh, and I don't think you were going to do that with what you invested already in corner. Now, again, if they didn't do all that, then yeah, they would have jumped all over it. They probably would have signed him to a mega deal if they hadn't been able to secure the guys that they got. But they feel comfortable in their young corners taking the lumps this year and just getting better. And I know it's going to be something that everybody's going to be upset with on a week-to-week basis, as well as running back. But these are positions in flux right now. And I think offensive line is next. And I think that you have to hope that they can get these young guys and then wait until they develop and they're all good at the same time. And that's how you build a team. And then you get a window to a year or two window to compete for a championship. And that's reality. I mean, that's how you build a team. So again, there's obvious curiosity. There was obvious curiosity with Joe Hayden when he was first cut. And I understand that. I understand why Eagles fans want to just sit back and say, look, we got our corner. We're fine. We're set. But that's just not going to happen. Even if they got Joe Hayden, there would have been questions. He hasn't played up to the level that we've known him to over the last couple of years, and he had injuries. So it's just another risky player. So I think that we have enough assets to bank on going into this season and forward at positions of need. And Joe Hayden, I don't think was necessary. I don't think the Eagles needed to spend what he got, and I definitely applaud Howie for definitely not pushing that kind of deal to get Joe Hayden. And yeah, that's it. I have confidence in these young guys, and I want to see them get beat and learn from their mistakes, so they have to. It's Miles asks, is the O-line worse than we thought, or is it just because of preseason? I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think preseason has anything to do with it. I just think that this line needs to wake up. I don't think there's any excuse for guys not hitting their assignments, dominating at the point of attack. I mean, this is one of those offensive lines that gained that reputation for being a big physical line with Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Jason Peters, and then now you have Isaac Seumalo in there. Jason Kelsey's not so much a big physical guy. He's good in space, but he struggles against bull rush, against big defensive fronts, and I just think that, you know, he's if anything, he's the one that's the weak link, and I think other guys have looked even worse. So I think they need to get their stuff together, or there's going to be changes on that O-line, and there's going to be changes either way. But I think that if they want to, you know, stay intact this year, they got to get everything together before the season gets to the point where they're holding the team back. So hopefully it's just a little bit of preseason rust, but hopefully they get it knocked off in time, because the season's only a week away. So they're not going to get any more practices at it. This is it. They're going to go out and line up on September 10th, and that's going to be when they next play together. So hopefully they're up to the challenge, because the Redskins have a really physical defense, and they have some pass rushers there that can get to the quarterback. So we'll see what happens. That Ninjas asks, do you believe Fletcher Cox can get 10 sacks this season? And is it unrealistic to think this Eagles defense can lead the NFL in sacks? That's a good question. I would say maybe in the future they might be up in the top of the sacks, but I think that Brandon Graham, I don't think he's so much a sack guy. He doesn't get high numbers of sacks. He's a good player, but he's not a big-time, like, elite sack guy. So I don't think the defense is going to lead the league. Fletcher Cox getting 10 sacks, that's very doable. I mean, he had a season in which he had, I think, 9.5 2 years ago, and then last year I think he was at 6.5. I think that the double teaming of other players will help Cox, but when they double him, other guys have to win, and that's, if guys win when Fletcher gets doubled, that's a win for me. So I don't care exactly the numbers. I just hope that is the dynamic, that Fletcher's winning and forcing doubles, and then other guys are winning and they're making teams panic, like, wow, we can't block these guys. So let's just see how it plays out. They need to be unstoppable back there, because their cornerbacks and secondary, as you know, are very young, and they need as much help as they can get, and a good pass rush gets that. So let's see what happens there. Smithboy93 asks, did the preseason performances from the first team offense and defense change your outlook of the team? Like, do you think we're a lot better than you thought, or nothing changed? Okay, that's a good question. I always, don't like to fall into the preseason hype, but I do it anyway. I have a couple players that I think really impressed me on both sides of the ball. But I ultimately think that no matter what happened in preseason, I had this thought before the preseason. Now I have it still, and during training camp and everything. So I think it's that the offensive line is the key to the Eagles' success on offense, and I think that on defense, obviously there's different things that will make them successful, but I think they're going to be no worse than they were last year on defense, which was 12th in points per game, points allowed per game, and that's not that bad. 12th in the league. That's a team that can have a winning record even if you get that up a little bit. So I don't think they're going to be any worse than what they were a year ago on defense. I think the key to this team is keeping Carson Wentz upright in the pocket, healthy, giving him time to throw, make decisions, and hurt the defense. And that's on the offensive line. And I think that the team is going to go as far as the offensive line goes. And I think that it'll be good enough to compete for a playoff spot in December. Obviously, there's so many factors, but that's the one thing I think that could hurt this team, is that if Carson Wentz does not get the time to throw the ball, make decisions, and the offense seems like they're on their heels rather than making the defense, that run game, that the offensive line is going to be responsible for the pass game and the run game, and I think that they have all the control. If they can dominate, the Eagles' offense will win them games, and they'll be a team that goes into the playoffs. I can see that, but I just need to see it from the offensive line. And I think that that's the biggest thing with this team right now is their offensive line. And honestly, what I saw in preseason was that they weren't that great. They didn't play well, and Wentz can make things happen, but if you force him to do that so much, it'll cause mistakes, and it'll frustrate everybody. And there needs to be drives where the Eagles' offensive line can just run block, and they impose their will upon their opponent. And if they can do that, then this team will be good. And I don't think preseason changed that. I just wasn't really happy with what I saw from the offensive line in the preseason. But I think the defense, they're going to be pretty good. I like them. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to get beat. But I think they'll be, all in all, they'll be good enough to keep us in some games. If the offense can control it and finish and close games, they'll be a good team. So I think I had that thought before preseason, and I still have that thought. So didn't really change anything, but it showed me who's playing well and who's not. So Smithboy93 also asks, what are the 3 keys to the game to snap our 5-game losing skid to the Washington Redskins? 3 keys to the game. That's a great question. I think that, like what I just said, keeping Carson Wentz upright, dominating at the point of attack on offense as far as on the line of scrimmage, in the trenches, winning off the ball, going forward on offense, first and second downs you have to capitalize on. You have to get third and shorts, if anything, or get first downs consistently and move the football. I mean, that's at the line of scrimmage. That's your offensive line against an opposing team's defensive line. That's where it starts. That's where the movement starts. And I think if they can do that, then they'll have a good chance to beat Washington. That's number 1. Number 2, I think get pressure on Kirk Cousins. Too many times I've seen Kirk Cousins sit back there against our secondary, against our defense, and just carve us up. I think you need to get pressure on Kirk Cousins, move him off his spot, hit him, get him off sync. He's got a bunch of new receivers. It's the complete opposite of what I said the key to winning the game was for our offense, and that's to eliminate that option on the opposing team's offense. Those are the 2 keys to any game pretty much, and I think with the Redskins, we've not been able to do those things against them. If you remember any of these games going back to last year when Lane Johnson got suspended and Big V's in there and Wentz is in there getting killed, it's those types of things that ultimately lose you the game. So protecting our quarterback and getting pressure on their quarterback, that's the 1 and 2. And then number 3, I would say win the turnover battle. You can't turn the ball over, and that's going to going to be a turnovers and penalties, self-inflicted wounds, as Chip Kelly, our old coach, would like to call it. That's going to be a problem for your offense. You turn the ball over too much, and then the opposing team protects it, and you're going to lose that game. I mean, for the most part, that should be a loss. So it doesn't always happen, but you can't lose the turnover battle, and you have to protect the football, and you have to force turnovers as well. So it's big, winning that turnover battle. So those are the 3 keys to the victory, really for any game, but for Washington, those are things we have to control and be able to make plays. And we're gonna do some good things, but we got to just be consistent, and that'd be big. So Tyler Whaley, 46, asks, what was the point in trading John Dornbos? And this is the last question. I think John, this is a great question to end on, because John Dornbos he's a great guy, great team guy, great leader, just presence, everything. I mean, he was one of the faces of this this team for the last 10 years. And yeah, he's a long snapper, but we love guys who give it their all, who are great guys. And John has an interesting story, and if you don't know it, look it up. He has a really interesting story of how it's tragic, the story of his childhood. And I booked him for a charity event. He was a motivational speaker. He is a motivational speaker. He does events. He does magic for the kids and things like that. And I worked for a nonprofit organization when I lived in Philadelphia, right out of college. And I booked him for a charity event, and he was awesome, and everyone loved him. And he actually ended up linking that charity with the Eagles Youth Partnership, and interacting with the players and things like that, and having the players represent their organization a little bit, and that whole deal. If you know anything about nonprofits, it's good to get involved with the local sports teams and things like that. It can really help, really go a long way. So it was cool having just John Dornbos be the bridge to all that, and that's the kind of guy he is. And they're really trading him really does hurt. I mean, they're really going in a different direction right now, and there's a lot of change happening, and people aren't prepared to lose these guys because we've liked them for so long. Guys like Brent Selleck and Darren Sproles. Even though Darren hasn't been with us for much, a whole lot of time, he's just immediately a fan favorite. Great player. So these guys, they're older guys, and they're going to be moving on, and they won't be in football much longer. And I think that what this town really needs is a championship more than anything. And I think Howie Roseman is just trying his hardest to make that happen. And I think that getting some return on a 37-year-old long snapper might not be, pulling the best, honoring your guys type practice there with that guy, but to get return value on a long snapper is just pretty. I mean, even if it was just a 7th round pick, it's pretty significant. So we have a young guy in I think his name's Rick Lovato, and he's apparently looked good. And John Dornbos actually suffered a wrist injury last year that affected him and hurt some of his snaps. And I think this Lovato guy they really believe in, so I think that they're going to give this guy a shot. And he's 24 years old, so maybe he's the new guy that comes in, and he's the new the new long snapper. But no one's ever going to replace John Dornbos. No one's ever going to be the new John Dornbos. He's a unique character and a great guy, and I wish him all the best in his journey. And what better to be a magician down in New Orleans on Bourbon Street doing your magic and stuff, and just it's great. So it's good luck to him, and it's a great city, great organization, and a winning culture there. So it's you're not going anywhere that's a terrible place. So it's not that playing in the NFL is terrible anyway, but that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, as Eagles fans, we should all wish John Dornbos the best, and that'll wrap it up for me. One more to say, I'm really excited for this team, and I think a lot of Eagles fans are going to be surprised that doubted Howie Roseman, and I think that these moves are going to pay off, and we're going to see a really nice season. So hopefully that's the case, and I'll see you probably next week for another episode of Bird Buzz. Try to get a weekly chirp out, but there's really not much else to say. Maybe when the 53 roster gets cut down, we'll talk a little bit about that. But other than that, it's just fly, Eagles, fly, and enjoy the week leading up to the first Eagles game of the season against the Washington Redskins. I will be sure to get a post game out to you guys. So see you then. Fly, Eagles, fly. Have a good day, and let's go Birds. We're coming, baby. Let's do it.